The 7 items that actually matter when everything else fails. You've been lied to. Every survival guru, every prepper channel, every tactical bro with a sponsor code, they've been selling you the same beautiful lie. They show you their 70-pound bug out bags stuffed with 50 essential items. They call it preparedness. I call it a mistake with shoulder straps, because here is what they don't tell you. When the grid goes down, when supply chains snap, when your neighborhood turns chaotic, the guy with the massive pack is the guy who doesn't make it past the first checkpoint. He is too slow, too visible, too committed to gear that stops mattering. The second his knees give out at mile 3. The survival industry is selling you camping trips. I'm preparing you for a collapse. Most of those 50 items, redundant garbage, comfort trash that'll stop you from moving fast. When speed is everything, but there are exactly 7 items that actually matter. 7 tools that create capabilities instead of clutter. This isn't about what feels right. It is about what works when everything else has failed. The multiplier rule. Before we get to the list, you need to understand the only rule that matters in a world that stopped making sense. I call it the multiplier rule, and it is brutally simple. If something only does one job, it is a liability you can't afford. A unitasker is a luxury, a comfort item from the old world. When you're carrying your entire survival capacity on your back, every ounce has to justify its existence by doing at least 3 essential jobs. Not nice to have jobs, critical jobs. We're not packing gear, we're packing capabilities. In the old world, you had a kitchen full of specialized tools because you had a kitchen. You had a garlic press, a lemon zester, an avocado slicer. Now you have a knife, and that knife better be able to do all of that. Plus, build your shelter. Plus, defend your supplies. When someone decides they want your knife, every item I'm about to show you is a force multiplier, a capability generator, a tool that punches above its weight class. Because in a collapsed world, weight is the enemy, and versatility is the only currency that matters. Item 1. The infinite spark. Here is what stops you first. Not starvation, not dehydration, not raiders. Hypothermia. UV got maybe 90 minutes in cold, wet conditions before your core temperature drops below the point of no return. Your hands stop working, your brain stops making decisions. You stop being a survivor and start being a cautionary tale. And here is the sick joke. You probably think you're covered. You've got a lighter, waterproof matches, a magnesium striker from Amazon. Wrong. Lighters run out of fuel. Matches get wet despite the waterproof label. And that magnesium striker, it is a gimmick that barely works when your hands are steady and dry, which they won't be. You need fire, not eventually, not if conditions are perfect. Right now, the solution, a high-quality, oversized Ferro Rod, not the tiny keychain version, not the cheap knockoff. Thick, long military-grade ferrocerium rod with a dedicated striker. A good Ferro Rod gives you 15,000 strikes, guaranteed sparks, in conditions that would make every other fire-starting method a sad joke. It works when it is wet. It works when it is frozen. It works when you're shaking so hard you can barely hold it. The spark it throws is 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to ignite almost anything if you've prepared your tinder right. But here is where the multiplier rule kicks in. This isn't just a fire starter, it is a signal device. Those sparks are visible for hundreds of yards in the dark. It is a psychological weapon against despair, and in a desperate situation, that Ferro Rod can be scraped to create fine metal shavings. For emergency, tinder, one tool, multiple capabilities. That is the rule. Item 2. The liquid survival matrix. Fire is just one part of a system. You can have all the sparks in the world, but if you can't purify water, you're just delaying the inevitable. The survival rule of 3s. 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water. But here is what they don't emphasize. That 3-day water limit is generous. In reality, you'll be useless after 24 hours. Your decision making will degrade. You'll make mistakes that cost you everything. So you bought a survival straw. One of those fancy life straw things. Great. Except what happens when it clogs with sediment? What happens when it freezes solid? What happens when you need to carry water back to camp instead of drinking at the source? Like a deer at a watering hole. Your expensive filter just became a useless plastic tube. The answer, a 32-ounce single wall stainless steel water bottle with a nesting cup, not aluminum, not plastic, not double wall insulated, which you can't put directly in fire. Single wall stainless steel. Here is the physics that saves your life. Boiling water at 212 degrees for 1 minute neutralizes 100% of pathogens. Every bacteria, every virus, every parasite. It is the oldest purification method in human history, and it is still the most reliable because you can see it working. But that bottle becomes a multiplier. It is your water carrier. It is your cooking pot. That nesting cup can boil rice, make soup, heat scavenged canned goods. It is your hot water bottle. Fill it before bed. Wrap it in a shirt. Stuff it in your sleeping setup. You've just added hours of warmth to your core. Temperature management. It is even a defensive tool in a pinch. A 32-ounce steel bottle filled with water weighs about 2 pounds and has enough mass to be effective if you need it. 1 item, 5 functions. Item 3. The infinite architecture. Everyone packs a tent. It makes sense, right? 4 walls, a roof, a floor, protection from the elements. Except a tent is a 4-pound liability that only does one thing. You can't adapt it. You can't camouflage it. You can't use it for anything except being a tent. And worse, it is a giant, I have gear worth taking advertisement. Visible from 200 yards away. Plus, tents break, zippers fail, poles snap, fabric tears. You need shelter that adapts, shelter that hides, shelter that does 10 jobs instead of 1. The solution, an 8x10 or 10x10 HEV duty tarp in a dull, natural color, olive drab, coyote brown, forest green. This is the single most versatile piece of survival gear you can own, and it weighs a fraction of a tent. Here is what a tarp is. It is anything you need it to be. It is an A-frame shelter. It is a lean-to. It is a poncho. Cut a hole in the middle. Drape it over yourself. It is a water collector. Angle it right, and you've got gallons after a storm. It is a ground cover. It is a camouflage hide. It is an improvised stretcher. It is a signal panel. It is a shade structure. Waterproof materials create microclimates by controlling airflow and blocking wind. You can increase the effective temperature inside your shelter by 10 to 20 degrees compared to outside. That is the difference between sleeping and suffering. 1 tarp, dozens of configurations. Infinite adaptability. Item 4. The unkillable blade. The survival community has been arguing about this for decades. Hatchet versus machete. Folding knife versus fixed blade. Multi-tool versus dedicated blade. They're all wrong. A hatchet is too heavy and too specialized. A machete is too long, too awkward. A multi-tool is cute, but when you need to put force through a 4-inch branch to build your shelter frame, those tiny pliers aren't gonna cut it. You need 1 knife, 1 blade that can do real work. The answer, a 4 to -5-inch full tang carbon steel fixed blade knife. Let me break down why every word matters. Full tang means the blade and handle are one continuous piece of steel. This construction means the knife cannot break at the handle junction, no matter how hard you abuse it. Carbon steel means it can take and hold a razor edge better than stainless, and you can sharpen it on a river rock if you have to. 4 to 5 inches is the sweet spot, long enough to do real work, short enough to maintain control. Fixed blade means no moving parts to break, no lock to fail. It is a chunk of steel with a handle. That is it. Here is what this knife does. It batons firewood. You place the blade on a log and strike the spine with a heavy stick. You've just replaced your hatchet. It builds your shelter. You can carve notches, cut cordage, shape stakes, strip bark. It processes game if you manage to trap or hunt food. It is your last-ditch defense tool. 1 knife, 4 functions. And unlike your multi-tool, this one will still be working decades from now. Item 5. The binding that doesn't quit. Everyone packs paracord. It has become the default survival cordage because someone somewhere decided the inner strands are useful for fishing line. But paracord is mediocre at everything. It stretches when wet. It is bulky for its strength rating. It is made of nylon, which means UV light slowly destroys it. You need something stronger, lighter, more reliable. The answer, 300 feet of number 36 tarred bank line. This is what commercial fishermen use. What professional trappers stake their livelihoods on. There is a reason for that. It has a 350-pound test strength, stronger than most paracord in a smaller diameter. It is tarred, which makes it UV resistant and waterproof. It doesn't degrade in sunlight. It doesn't absorb water and get heavy. It holds knots 10 times better than paracord because of the texture. Here is what you do with bank line. It is your ridge line for tarp shelters. It is your fishing line, actual fishing cordage. It is your trap line. It is your gear repair thread. It is even emergency shoelaces when yours snap. One spool, 6 functions, and it takes up less space than that bulky paracord you're about to toss. Item 6. The invisible multiplier. Here is a question that separates fantasists from survivors. What do you do when everything gets wet? Because it will. It always does. Maybe it rains for 3 days straight. Maybe you have to cross a river. Maybe condensation builds up inside your pack overnight. Moisture finds a way, and when it does, your entire survival system starts failing. Most preppers have no answer for this. They assume their pack is waterproof. It is not. They pack a single trash bag as an afterthought. It is not enough. The answer, 5 or more 55-gallon heavy duty contractor bags. This is the most underrated, most underappreciated, most versatile survival item on Earth. Here is what a contractor bag is. It is a pack liner. Put one inside your backpack before you load anything. Now, your entire load is waterproof. It is an emergency poncho. Cut a hole for your head and armholes on the sides. It is a water container. These bags can hold 55 gallons. It is a solar still component for creating water from plants. It is an improvised mattress. Fill it with leaves or pine needles and tie it off. It is a signal device. Black or bright orange bags are visible from the air. It is a gear sled. Load your equipment onto a bag in the snow and drag it behind you. For the weight of a single t-shirt, you get 7 life-saving capabilities. Item 7. The everything fixer. Here is a truth survival fanatics refuse to accept. Gear doesn't last forever. That tarp you're counting on, it is going to develop a tear. Your boots, the soles will separate. Your clothes will rip. Your pack straps will fray. When this happens, you have 3 options. Abandon the gear and lose capability. Try to repair it with improvised materials that don't work. Or fix it properly. The answer, 1 roll of high-quality Gorilla brand duct tape wrapped flat. Not the full roll. That is bulky. You wrap 20 to 30 feet around an old gift card or piece of cardboard. Flat storage. Massive utility. Here is why this is essential. It is your first aid kit. You can make butterfly bandages. Seal a puncture temporarily. Immobilize a sprained joint. Blister proof hot spots on your feet. It is your gear repair system. That tear in your tarp. Patch it with duct tape on both sides. And it is waterproof. Again, it is your fire starting backup. Duct tape is petroleum based and extremely flammable. Roll a small piece into a ball. Hit it with a Ferro Rod spark. And you've got a fire starter that burns for several minutes. It is your cordage backup. You can twist duct tape into surprisingly strong makeshift rope. It is your emergency shelter repair. Pole broke. Duct tape can splint a broken stick or create a friction junction. 1 item, 6 functions, weighs about 4 ounces in flat, packable form. The real tool. And there it is. The 7. Fire, water, shelter, blade cordage, waterproofing, repair. But here is what most people miss. The gear is just the starting point. What matters is knowing how to chain these tools together. How to see a contractor bag and duct tape and bank line. And realize you can build a dozen solutions from 3 items. The real survival tool is your brain. The items are just what your brain uses to solve problems. So, practice. Actually use these tools before you need them. Build fires, set up tarps, repair gear, train your thinking to see multipliers everywhere. Because when it matters, you won't have time to figure it out. You'll have what you know and what you practiced. That is survival. The brain using the tools. Your move.